Hi, this is Lou, and I thought some people might be interested to hear what kind of requests from fans that game designers get. If you've been a published game designer for many years, you'll get requests from players, usually by email, sometimes in person, such as, "I need a copy of the rules for long out-of-print games," or "Can you look at this game I designed?" and others. Usually, whoever it is enjoys one or more of my games, and I enjoy knowing that people do like the games. It's a considerable part of the benefit of designing games. I get relatively few of these requests, so I always try to respond. The obvious example is asking for a copy of the rules. Rules for recently in-print games are often posted online, but not always for older games. So someone wrote to me recently to say he and his brother had been playing Valley of the Four Winds, which is a game I designed and was published by Games Workshop. It was their first board game in 1980 or 1981, somewhere in there. He needed the rules for his copy of the game. They had used his brother's copy, and the brother's life was, quote, too hectic, unquote, for him to copy the rules for his brother. Well, I'd scanned the rules long ago, so we arranged the transfer through a cloud drive because they were too big for email. But we also talked about a Steamie head to play the game using miniature figures. Now, I'd been asked by a publisher whether this was practical, so I'm interested to see his results. I think there's too many different sculpts, and there's also too many spaces on the board. It's a hex game, and if you have miniatures of any size, you probably have to make the hexes bigger. The one good thing about the game is there isn't unit stacking, so it's one piece per hex. Maybe the oddest request I ever received, someone had seen a photo online of a prototype of my Doomstar, which was later published as a video game. He wanted a copy of the background astronomical photo I used to give to his girlfriend. Okay, I believe it was public domain. Anyway, I sent it to him. Now, another request that's less common, but I used to have people asking me about computerizing Britannia or some other game that I had published. The Britannia especially is a tough game to do because the computer opponent would be really difficult. And when people buy a computer game, they tend to expect to be able to play against computer opponents. So no one has ever got very far. The farthest any person got is somebody who didn't write to me. It's an Android version I ran across online, which is far from done, that I would expect was a student project. Nonetheless, one of these requests did lead to publication of Doomstar as a video game, because I said to these guys, well, Britannia is pretty rough for somebody to do as a first game, but I have this unpublished game that would be relatively straightforward to do, and that might work out for both of us. And the game has been published. It's made a little money, not nearly as much as the time that the guys put into it who programmed it, I think. And who knows if anything more will come of that. Now, the most peculiar case was someone belligerently accosted me on Twitter about something connected with Sea Kings, which was in the process of going through Kickstarter, I believe. And he acted as though I knew what he was talking about, which made it very difficult for me to understand what he was talking about. But I questioned him because he wouldn't shut his mouth, in effect, and I found he had a legitimate complaint. The game artist had used a font that the complainer had created, but the artist thought was free. Now, of course, designers have no say about the artwork used in a game officially and generally practically. So his business was with the publisher, not with me. But evidently he saw me on Twitter and didn't understand how these things work. Anyway, it got sorted out quite quickly once the publisher's attention was attracted and they found out that it was not a public domain font. Another common one is, will you look at my game design? Some people offer consultant money, and my reply there is, it would be too expensive for what it could be worth. In other cases, I just say I had to decide long ago not to do this unless I knew the person well. And this takes some explanation. But in general, it's the same reason why some publishers require release agreements before they'll look at any game, any prototype. There are too many novice game designers who don't understand copyright. You cannot copyright game ideas. They also don't understand parallel development, which is that two games are designed that are much alike but are developed independently. This happens more often than you might think. So these novices are much too likely to resort to legal action where legal action doesn't make sense. Unfortunately, defending even a frivolous lawsuit in the United States costs a lot of money because the legal system doesn't work right. It fails to work. So if I looked at a game and later a game of mine was published that was anything like the novice designer's game, they might pursue legal action, and I can't afford that. Now there's another reason about this that causes me to say no. I cannot spend the time to thoroughly test such games. I've got to test my own. So, how much can you tell about a game from just looking at it, including reading the rules? Well, if a game has been published and you can read about it and talk with people who've played and read the rules, you can learn a lot in a short time without playing it. But that's not the situation in this case. I have a lot of experience, so I can spot better many things that won't work. In general, I can see what's really weak, but I can't tell what's really good. Think about it, folks. If publishers could do that, they'd make a lot more money than they do. There are some game design teachers who claim that they judge a game on how good it is. Well, they're full of bull. They don't know what they're talking about because it's not possible for them to do so. They don't have time to even play it once. So this is all another reason not to look at a game, and why if I was doing it as a consultant it would cost the designer a lot because I'd have to charge for a lot of time. So some requests are more interesting than others, but it's all interesting. Thanks for listening.